Well, hello and welcome to Takeout Tuesday. We've been in a typical, it seems anymore, pattern of disruption in our lives. And that's a word I want to pick up on tonight. I've heard it on the radio the last 24 hours, and just read an article on the internet that I discovered by accident about this very subject of disruption. Some of the disruption going on in our lives, and this is not a complaint, it's just a reality. Jill's dad has been in VA hospital with congestive heart failure and pneumonia. So there's been a lot of energy and time and activity involved in caring for him. And we're praying he gets well and gets out and returns to the family. And then it's that sad moments is why I've decided not to have another pet. My oldest daughter and family, they're a dog of 7 years. It was a rescue greyhound, passed away today, and it was just excruciating. And so there's been a lot going on, and my oldest granddaughter's birthday today, 14 years old. I've got a teenage great-granddaughter, so it's been quite the day, quite the last couple of days, honestly, the last couple of weeks. And just to pick up on that thought of disruption, it's defined as in Webster's as a break or interruption in the normal course of some activity, event, or process. I want to expand on that a little, especially for application to what we're looking at today, because it's become a buzzword in the corporate business world, and of course has crept over into the church world and what have you, as it often does. And I would say that disruption is a reality of life. It happens. None of us can control really the flow of events in our life, staying in a continuous, calm and comfortable pattern. And as much as we try, we all are familiar with and know it certainly isn't us, is it? A control freak in your life. And it's the mistaken idea that through your will, through your work, through your guidance and everything, that you can bring about a desired result for yourself and for others. Now, what will usually end up happening, it'll frustrate you. And long before you, it will frustrate the others you're supposedly working to control good things for. So it's impossible. We can't. We're not God. And only God knows the future. Only God has any control of the future. And so when we look at this idea of disruption, it is a part of life. It's going to happen. We don't like it. It's often not fun. We are creatures of comfort, predictability. We like patterns. We say we don't, but we like things to kind of, especially if they kind of fit and feel good, just to stay the same. But we understand in God's economy that He brings disruption sometimes into our life to kind of rattle our cage a little, to challenge our status quo, our stagnancy, our unwillingness to be alert to and engage in the opportunities of ministry and mission that He has presented into our lives. And we get very distracted from that which He has designed for, in, and through our lives. And I think it's a beautiful story of this in the book of Mark, chapter 4 and verse 35. Now, I will say this, that disruption can be a positive thing in our life. If we will give proper attention to what's going on, that we'll have the right attitude, if we will engage it with a sense that God is in control, that He's working, and that He brings out outcomes and results and things in our lives through these disruptions that we otherwise would never pay attention to, that they can have a very positive result in our life. Such was the case here with the disciples. Now, it's so interesting, for up to this point, it's been academics. It's been spiritual life 101. Jesus has had them in the classroom. He's teaching them about the Christian life, so to speak. And I'm sure up to this point, when it's all in the church setting, the Sunday school class, the Bible study or small group, it's just all great. And we're excited about it. But then all of a sudden we understand that once again, God is never satisfied with just the academics. He's all about application. He's all about activating us into a fruitful and fulfilling life for His honor and His glory. So He gives tests. We say we know it, we got it, we believe it, and then He puts us in a real life situation that all of a sudden we go, whoa, I need to study more. I need to go back and get that lesson over again. And sometimes the only way we can really, and even come to know it in an experiential way, not just an experimental, but an experiential way, the realities, the truth, and the transforming power of God's Word is to have to apply them in the midst of disruptive events in our life. Well, let's read it right quick. 4 questions we're going to ask you real quick. Mark 4:35. And on the same day, when evening had come, Jesus said to them, let us cross over to the other side. Now He's, of course, taken them across the Galilean Sea. When we look at, I believe in Matthew 8 and Luke chapter 8, these are cross references from the Synoptic Gospels here. Same story, a little bit different angle. This is, in some ways, the most concise, but yet the most revealing of them. So I've chosen this of the 3. And so He said, let's cross over to the other side. Now, when He had left the multitude, they took Him along in the boat as He was, and other little boats were along with Him. So in other words, of course, they're going to cross the Galilean Sea, and it looks like it's at evening, it's night. And I'm sure when they started out at point E, based on what they saw circumstantially, hey, it's a crossing. And, and in fact, they had to feel pretty good, at least 4 of them did, because 4 of them were professional fishermen before they were called by Jesus into full-time ministry. So they weren't worried about this. They got in the boat and they took off to cross. But unforeseen to them, before they got to point B, there was a disruption, a violent disruption in their life. One that turned their world upside down literally that night and put them on the brink of what they felt was certain disaster and devastation. So they get in the boat, and other little boats were along with them. So there's a little fleet going together. And here's the disruption. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat so that it began to fill. So there are 4 questions I want to ask you here. Number 1, who is in control of your life? Now, before you answer that too quickly, I think the academic answer is, God's first in my life. God's in control. I know He is. Do you really believe that? Do you behave that way when a disruption comes into your life? Do you panic like any other unbeliever? I'm not knocking you. I'm not attacking you. And I'm not criticizing. I'm human too. And many, many times the first response we have to a disruption, especially a negative one as we see it, a dangerous one, a threatening one, is fear or apprehension or, retreat or whatever. And so we've got to ask, who's in control? Well, in this case, Jesus is. It's His idea to cross over. And I don't want to read too much into it, but here's what He's saying. Let us go to the other side. In other words, He's going to get them to the other side. You're in a situation right now that maybe God's led you to do something, and right in the middle between point A and B, a huge disruption and disappointment has come into your life. And you're struggling with, whose idea was this? Who's in control here? Well, understand Jesus calls you and I to follow Him. And it's ironic that He's just taught, I think it's possibly in Matthew chapter 8, that he's talking about the cost of commitment and discipleship. So there's a price to be paid to it. And in this event, it's trusting Him in the midst of a storm. So number 1, who's in control? Number 2, who really cares about you? I love this in verse 38. It says, but he, Jesus, was in the stern. Storm's just about to sink him, and he's asleep on a pillow. Now, the stern is the back of the boat. It's where the guidance system is to the boat. He's in control. But most important, you got to understand, he really cares about you. And it says, they awoke him. He said, teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? This is almost a sarcastic attack on Jesus. Teacher, like, you've been teaching us all these wonderful, wonderful principles and making all these promises, and here we are, and we're about to sink and drown in the middle of the sea in the dead of night in the midst of this storm. Do you not care? You're asleep. You're dozing on the job. Boy, sometimes we get very accusative toward God, don't we? Like, where are you? What are you thinking? What are you up to? Why me? But Jesus cares. I love the old hymn that says, does Jesus care when my heart is pained too deeply for mirth and song? As the burdens press and the cares distress, and the way grows weary and long? The answer in the chorus, oh yes, he cares. I know he cares. His heart is touched with my grief. When the days are weary, the long nights dreary, I know my Savior cares. Number 3, who can bring the calm to your storm? Well, it says right here, but he was asleep in the midst of the ship, but then he arose and rebuked the wind. Now, it says in verse 37, a great windstorm arose. And then in verse 39, I wish I had time to do the dramatic buildup of this. But it says he arose. The storm arose, and then Jesus arose. And guess who won? Guess who will win every time? For nothing is impossible with him. Nothing can separate us from him. So he arose, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. From a great storm to a great calm. I mean, I can't imagine the serenity of this, to thinking you're about to die, to all of a sudden calm sails, stars are out, the moon's full, it's shining on the water. It's just unbelievably wonderful. He can do that. And he said to them, why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? And here's the drama of it, and I close, that really hit me. And they feared exceedingly. Now, they've already feared exceedingly, in my estimation. They're afraid they're about to die. But something happens here that transforms their negative fear and apprehension, and it's offset by a greater fear. And that greater fear, I believe, is the fear of who Jesus is. Because they say right here, who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him? He's God in the human flesh. He's God the Son, Jesus Christ. And so we see here, it's so important to realize, and I close with this verse, Proverbs 14:26. In the fear of the Lord is strong confidence. Last question, who's your confidence tonight? Who's your confidence in going from A to B? Who's the confidence in your process, in your transition, in your journey, and sometimes really in the midst of your disruption? It says, the fear of the Lord is our strong confidence, and his children shall have a place of refuge. I hope you find refuge in Jesus tonight. In the midst of the storm, understand he's in control, he cares, he can calm you, and he can be your confidence through anything you face. God bless you. Have a great rest of the week.